In today's episode of the Interior Design Her podcast, we're speaking with Marsha Sefcik, design business consultant and creator of the Bring Calm to Chaos program about building sustainable design businesses that actually work. Far too many interior designers work incredibly hard, deliver exceptional design, and still can't figure out why they're barely profitable or constantly exhausted. The truth is, most interior designers never received any business operations training, and that gap between design talent and business structure is costing you money on every single project. During our chat, Marsha explains that the problem isn't your design ability or your clients. It's business chaos that creates invisible money leaks you can't even identify without proper systems. Marsha shares why time tracking matters even if you don't bill hourly, how client portals eliminate email overwhelm, and her hybrid billing approach that protects profitability during unpredictable project phases. If you're working hard for not enough money, you're going to love my interview with Marsha Sefcik. Let's get to it.
Marsha, you've worked in the design industry from a whole bunch of different angles, running your own design firm, working at MyDoma, helping designers all across North America, and now consulting with designers on their business operations. Can you walk us through that journey, how that was for you, all the steps you made and the experience that helped shape your approach to helping designers?
Definitely. So I come from a corporate background, and my career started in a corporate industry, sales, marketing, support, training, and what have you. And then when it was time for my husband and I to have a family, I'm like, I don't want to have my family and work corporate. And I always loved design, but in my day, when you're in high school and you're talking to your guidance counselor and you're talking about career opportunities, interior design wasn't something that was on the menu. And so I had a very, windy trajectory to get to where I am today. But anyway, when it came time to have a family, I went back to school and got my diploma in interior decorating. And during the time of motherhood and small children, I worked part-time on my own business and continued to, do projects and what have you. Fast forward to when they're teenagers, I started freelancing. And then from there, my business started to expand on its own. And I needed a project management platform because, as you can imagine, in the last 2 decades, the industry has changed a lot. And so when I started, we were still very much putting pencil to paper to do our floor plans. Mood boards were definitely, big honking pieces of foam core with images attached to them and what have you, right? Like this was before, we were using computers. I did use Chief Architect when I came out of school. That was the program that I learned to use to do my, some floor planning and rendering, but definitely it was very manual. Let's put it that way. So you jump forward and, our industry has changed so much. And so I 5 years ago needed a project management platform. Using emails and Google Drive and what have you was no longer cutting it. And because I had been in the online design space through the freelancing that I was doing, I saw that as a very viable opportunity to expand my business beyond the location where I was living. I live in a very rural area here in Canada. And so that obviously provided me with a great opportunity, but I knew I needed something to support that side of my business. And so that's where MyDoma came in. And so I started using it, and I love that it was Canadian, and I loved that it was created by a designer. And so I actually reached out to them and said, I really like this software. I'd like to support it. And so that's how I started in that, arena in the industry. And through there, I started, of course, working with a lot of designers. And one thing that I noticed, Douglas, over the last 4 years, actually, was I was hearing a lot of the same things from designers because I was very fortunate that I got to spend a lot of one-on-one time with designers, and I was hearing the same thing over and over again. It's my back end is, there is no back-end operations. I'm winging it. I'm completely overwhelmed. If someone was to pull back the curtain, and this is the analogy I would often hear, if someone was to pull back the curtain and see how I'm actually running things, there's no way I would get hired for these projects. And so I was just keeping hearing the same thing over and over again. And I come to realize, because they start asking me, Can you share with us how you run your business and how you do the things? And so I always thought my corporate career was very separate from my design career. And I had a moment where it's like, no, they're not. The skills that I learned and the experience that I got in those 10 years working in a corporate environment definitely gave me, I guess, the business know-how to run my business as a designer decorator. And so I melded those things together without even thinking about it. So now I started in the past, couple of years, started working with designers one-on-one. And so I created my program, Bring Calm to Chaos, because that's essentially what we're doing. And start working with designers in that way. But I also give them virtual admin support as well. So, but on the back end of things. So I have a couple of ways that I can support them. And so in that period of time, if I look back over the designers that I have helped over the past couple of years, a lot of them are midlife designers like myself. They're primarily women who are exhausted by this whole idea of the hustle culture, which I don't prescribe to. They're overwhelmed by the back end of their business, and they're unsure how to create that work-life balance in the season that they're in. So whether that's motherhood, that's empty nesting, that's caregiving of parents, health changes, or emotional transitions, they still need to be able to run a profitable business. And I'm here to tell them that you can still do all those things. It's not an all or nothing. And so what I find also from a lot of designers, because a lot of designers are solo designers or they have a very small team, and often that team is remote, is that they're feeling really alone and that they're really struggling. So when I start working with them, one of the first things I hear is, I so look forward to our sessions together because I know that I'm going to have someone to talk to at least once a week and talk things through, and what have you. And so that is where my business has kind of, I guess, organically evolved and what have you. And so why I feel the work that I do matters is that the industry is overwhelmingly female led. And many designers are building businesses now in midlife. And so that's whether they have taken a hiatus, some time away to be with their families. This is their second or third career, or they have worked in another industry, or they have worked as a designer with someone else, and now they want to go out on their own. They want to branch out on their own because they want to have the autonomy to show up how they want to show up and serve their clients how they want to serve them, and then of course provide the services that they want to provide. So despite talent and experience, many designers are also earning far less than they're worth. And I think some of that is because we're women, and a lot of us tend to be people pleasers, and we don't, I guess, understand what our worth is, or we don't or we're not sure how to price our services, and we tend to give things away, and we tend to do more than what we're getting compensated for. And so that, of course, leads to burnout, right? And people feeling really resentful. And so for me, it's always like, if I'm going to take on a project, especially back in the day when I had young children, it's like, okay, well, what's the sacrifice I'm really willing to make to work with this client? And is the project going to be worth it for me? Right? Because I always tell the designers, we all know that we can design beautiful spaces. There's no question that's what we do, and that's what we can do. But getting there, how we get there, and the journey that the client has working with us to get there, that's the potentially the sacrifice that we're making. So I see a lot of designers taking on projects with nightmare clients because they don't have a process, and they're just saying yes to anything that's coming. And I get it. When you're building a business and you need to pay your mortgage, your rent, and you need to put food on the table and what have you, you're thinking, especially us women, it's like, oh, I can't say no to that job. I have to say yes to it. But then, it doesn't end up serving you, kind of thing. So I say we need to have some sort of qualification process in place, of course, to make sure that the type of projects that you want to work on, but also the type of clients you want to work with, that that's what you're attracting. And so that is something that we talk about in my program as well. So it's not just about, oh, well, how are you doing your proposals, or how are you sourcing, and what's your pricing, and what's your markup. Yes, that's definitely a piece of the puzzle, but I also teach and mentor and support designers on things beyond that. And that's coming into making sure that your business aligns with your life, because I don't again prescribe to the whole idea that I'm living to work, right? We want our businesses to sustain us, and so we can have the life that we want to have. And so and as again, a lot of designers they're not great with boundaries, and we can that's a whole other conversation. So with the support that I offer designers, the program is a 90-day program, because again, it takes time to work through all these things. I'm not just touching the surface, and it's not a one size fits all. So I don't when a designer reaches out and they want to work with me, I listen to, where are you at right now? Where do you want your business to be? What's broken? What needs to be fixed? Where can we find some ease and bring some joy back into your business? Because I don't believe in a one size fits all. And I don't believe in telling someone, this is the type of client that you need to be working with, and this is the demographic, and this is the services you need to be offering. And, I don't do that, because I've been on that side of things. I've talked to coaches and mentors, in my career, where I was told, you need to work with this type of client. And I'm like, well, if that's the type of client you're telling me I need to work with, then I'm not going to, that type of client doesn't exist here locally for me, and I don't make grandiose gestures for the designers too, saying, if you work with me, I guarantee you're going to make, X amount of figures. I don't do that either. So there's no grandiose gestures, but what I do promise is that this is a judgment-free zone. And I do guarantee that at the end of the program, you will feel better about yourself and about your business. So that's how I came to, a young mom coming into this industry, and how much it has changed in 2 decades. And I feel how much it has changed in the last 5 years, and technology is a part of our process, and it can be overwhelming. And so a lot of the designers that I work with, they're really good face to face with their clients. That's where they're spending their time, but they're not so great on the back end and the tech side of things. And, our clients expect a certain level of tech, I believe, in the process as well. But I also feel we shouldn't be buried in our inboxes, and we shouldn't, our phones shouldn't be constantly blowing up with text from clients and what have you. So I do feel we do need to have some sort of separation between business and life. And tech
Sure.
can help us do that. And it can definitely help us run things smoothly.
Well, I've only dipped my toes into this industry then during COVID, and it was only because I had just exited. I'd sold my two businesses right before COVID hit, and so I was home, and my wife, who's a designer, was on the phone all day, and we had a 5-year-old at home who we were took her out of school the first year and homeschooled her. Um, and the stories you just told are the stories that I have heard now hundreds of times, right? I mean, designers come with like a built-in talent for design, and a lot of them go to design school. They don't all have to, but even
Yeah.
at design school, there's no business education. And
No.
so the designers and coaches that I've spoken with who have your background with some sort of corporate, even if when you entered that corporate world at whatever level, it's not just a job, it was an education for you.
Definitely.
And so you were able to bring that, and so you swam in that corporate environment and developed a set of skills that most designers just don't have. And I can see, like, you're almost like a lifeline, right? The things,
Mhm.
once they start understanding what you're offering to them, they're going to
Mhm.
grab hold, and it becomes this real great education piece. You were saying that your program is 90 days, and do they still, your students have access to you, some access to you beyond that 90 days?
Definitely. You know what? A lot of the designers that have done my program, I still work with today in some capacity. Yes. Yes. It's not a, because you get to know each other, right? And again, it can be a very lonely industry. So I do continue to offer support. And so, and again, I started out offering my mentorship program as a lifeline to designers, but it kind of evolved in that I continue to offer them virtual support hours beyond that, because because they started asking. They're like, I don't want this to end. I want to continue working with you. I want to continue having you help. I've got a new project and I don't know how to price it. Where do I even start? And then and I help them with their tech, and I help them set up things. With tech, I always say, don't go chasing after the latest and shiniest thing, because we could be subscribing to a plethora of subscriptions, right, and services, but if you're not using them or they're too difficult, then don't use it, kind of thing. And so we often hear, oh, well, what's your workflow and what's your process? And a lot of designers like, I don't even know what that means. And then they're chasing after someone post what their workflow is, and I'm like, we all work differently. Our brains all work differently. And because, for example, I work with a lot of designers who have been diagnosed with ADHD, so my workflow is probably not going to work for them, right? So it's getting really personal with these designers and with these people that I work with, and let's finding out what works for you. And I always say we can tend to overcomplicate things, right? And if we overcomplicate things, especially our workflow and our process, we ourselves are not going to follow it. And then, of course, how can we expect the client to understand it, right? And follow it and abide by it as well. And I'm like, do not put boundaries in place for yourself, or what I call gates in place in your workflow if you yourself are not going to abide by them. Because so for me, for example, I have a no texting rule. I don't text with my clients. I don't have a separate work phone and a separate personal phone. It's one phone. And I don't want to be on a Sunday afternoon enjoying time with my family and my phone is blowing up by a client. So there is a no text rule. And of course, every now and then they'll text. Right. But I don't respond. I respond via email, and I have my windows where I respond, because the minute you respond to that text in your no text policy, the train's left the station, right? They're going to continue to text you. So, and I know some people, I do notice that when I mention boundaries, some people will close off. And I'm like, just give me an opportunity to explain why they're important. It's not you putting a shield up. It's not about you not being accessible to your clients and not serving your clients, but it is about protecting your time and your clients respecting that time, right? Because we're not all of a sudden, because I'm working in your project, your new best friend, right? We want them to feel that way, but we're not your new best friend. Is that, we're on call 24/7.
No, and an interior design, especially if you're doing like a full renovation of someone's home or living room or kitchen or whatever, is very stressful on the homeowner. So
Yes.
is it surprising that if the designer who is their Sherpa through this whole experience is the homeowner's gonna want to reach out to that designer. They're the one that is making things make sense. So when they're freaking out at 11:30 on a Friday night because of something, they think they've made the wrong decision. Like, yeah, some people are going to make that text. Some people are going to go, no, I'm not that person. I'm not going to bother. This can wait till Monday. Right. But
Yeah.
some people are going to try to step over that boundary.
And so your scenario that you just set up there for me has me questioning, well, why is your client freaking out at 11:30 on a Friday night? Right. And so something that I talk about with the designers is like, okay, identifying what type of client you're working with, because sometimes a client might be coming across as needy and they have a lot of questions. And it's not that they don't trust you, but their personality, they might just be an anxious person. And so how do you deal with that? And again, this is stuff business school doesn't teach you, right? How to identify different personalities. And so I always say communication, communication, communication. So one thing for me I've noticed is, of course, our clients, for the most part, they're not going to be too engaged, too involved during the work week. But on the weekend, when they have time to sit down and talk to their partner and review everything, that's when, yeah, there's going to be questions. So I always suggest on a Friday, I call it my admin morning, and I make sure I send a very detailed email to all my clients, even if not a lot have happened that week with their project. I give them a summary of what happened that week. I remind them of any important dates that's coming up. I remind them of any meetings or site visits that's happening in the following week. And so they get that end of week communication from me. And then I do say, if you have any questions over the weekend, please feel free to email me and I will be happy to look at that and reply to you, on Monday. So I even have so you have to have a communication policy. And I find a lot times what happens is designers are not being communicative on what their policies and procedures are. So I suggest that when you send over your contract and your letter of agreement, that you have such a document that outlines that separate from your contract and letter of agreement. You could even have it so it's interwoven into your client welcome guide. And it doesn't hurt to reiterate that. So if you're using like some sort of client portal as well, that the clients are accessing their project, have a page there as well, because we often know, because we can be bad for it too. Sometimes we need to be told and reminded of things multiple times, right? Just don't say it once and think the client's going to remember, kind of thing. So I do suggest that everyone have some sort of communication policy in place, and that it's no good to have the policy in place if you are yourself are not going to uphold it, right? So that Friday communication, making sure the client is aware of important dates that are coming up. You don't want to get to a point in a project where you've got the tiler on site ready to install the tile and you haven't even selected the tile. Like when that happens, that makes me ask, how did that happen? Like, obviously, there has been no design concept created for this client. The client hasn't approved anything, but now you've got the tiler calling you up saying, where's the tile? I'm ready to install. And there's so many steps that should have happened before you got to that point. So again, that's where having a process in place will save you, right? And also make you look good and put those clients at ease, whether it's an anxious client or not. If you got your client there too, and the tile guy is saying, where's the tile? And they're like, I don't know, we haven't even selected the tile, So again, it's all about that client journey and the client experience. And I do feel that is a piece that's often missing. And so when designers are saying, well, my pipeline is dried up, and it's like, okay, well, have you reached out to past clients? And, how did you treat those clients? And, because again, it's that experience. Again, I know the end result's going to be beautiful, but you don't want the client getting to the end result, and the only thing they remember is the price tag, or the only thing they remember is, the hiccups, because there are going to be hiccups, but it's how you handle them. It's how you respond to them, not react, but respond to them. That's going to, really wow that client and have that client want to refer you and want to have you back. Right. And so yeah, it is. I think we need to focus more on that client journey. And it's customer service. We are in a service-based business. Yes, it's a creative business, but so much of what we do is customer service. And so that is something, again, that we need to be cognizant of. I mean, another thing is designers like to say that they're not salesy and sales is not their thing. Well, as soon as you get a prospect reach out to you, you got to put your sales hat on. That's what you're doing. You're not just selling your design, but you're selling yourself, right? And again, if you do a good job with that, then you're going to get referrals. And so a lot of the designers that I work with, that's how they've built their business. They don't have to worry about their pipeline because they're getting repeat clientele and they're getting referrals, right? And so, yes, we have to show up on the social medias and we have to have a nice website and what have you, but because clients are going to go there to check us out, but that's not necessarily where we're going to attract the client, right? And so that's another piece of what I go through. We talk about marketing, and for me, it's like, what are you doing to attract, engage, nurture, and delight your clients and any potential prospects, right? You have to be hitting those 4 pillars. And so what are you doing to do that? So a lot of designers are like, I don't have time. Well, if you're waiting until your pipeline's dried up and you've walked out the door on your last project, and now you're starting to worry, you should, like, that's too late, right? You need to be consistently thinking about that. So something that I get all my designers to do is to set a date with themselves every week. I like Monday morning, your CEO date. And because you've got to put your CEO hat on, and you've got to sit down and you've got to look at your business. You've got to sit down and you actually have to work in your business. And I know a lot of designers are like, well, after the weekend, my inbox is just blown up from my clients, and I've got to hit the road, the road running. Well, okay, maybe don't do it on Monday. Maybe do it Friday after your admin time. But you have to find time to work on your business. And when the pipeline is dried up, that, I'm not saying it's too late, but again, we should be trying to be a little bit proactive, right? That shouldn't be happening. So I always say, let's avoid that feast and famine cycle that you're finding yourself in.
Well, yeah, and considering that this past year has been rough on a lot of residential designers, and a lot of it, for legitimate reasons, between tariffs, we're still coming back from like the weirdness of what the economy happened in COVID, and this general feeling that things aren't right.
Yes.
They talk about that on the news programs, and but the designers that I've spoken with that have done well are the ones who address that pipeline and have the systems in place. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect for you, but
Nope.
it's going to be a heck of a lot better than the person who doesn't have those in place. And it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So, I think none of us anticipated the boom that our industry experienced during COVID. Nobody expected that, right? But all of a sudden, everyone's home, and the things in your home that was you could ignore became glaringly obvious, and everyone wanted things fixed. And so, a lot of designers, did really, really well during COVID, and a lot of them started only wanting to take on projects where it was an entire house, right? They only want to, if you weren't looking at doing the entire home, they're not touching it. And so a lot of those designers now, with the turn of events over the past year, are finding that they're really slow because homeowners are being a little bit more protective over their wallets. And so they're not necessarily wanting to invest coming out of the gate on a whole home reno, but they might want to tackle the kitchen, or they might want to do the bathroom, or what have you. So I've had to see where some of those designers have had to pivot. And it's easier to pivot, like you mentioned, when you do have your process in place. It's a lot easier for you to respond to the economic climate, which we have no control over. We do not have any control over that for the most part. But if you have a process in place and you know your workflow, and you can easily go back and audit your projects, and you know what did well, what didn't, and you're constantly hearing from potential clients, they don't want to sign on for a full home. Well, to walk away from that project, I feel, is very short-sighted, right? Go in, do the kitchen, knock it out of the park. They're going to call you when they're ready to do the next part. And now you've got a client, right? No, you didn't get the big full home reno immediately, but you're going to have it if you do a really good job, right? On the 1 or 2 spaces they want to do. Now, I do agree that you should have a project minimum. For sure, you should have a project minimum. You don't want to be doing these nickel and dime projects necessarily, but it's not always, an all for nothing either.
So in preparation for our chat, I hopped on your website and went through everything, and
Okay.
I saw that the focus of your business was client onboarding, streamlining the processes, and copywriting. But
Mhm.
just talking with you now, it's obvious that you're offering much more than that.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so what you just mentioned, that's your customer service journey. That is your marketing piece and what have you. So we do spend some time because we kick off the program. Kick off my work with the designers in the program by doing a business audit. And so we go through your entire workflow from prospects, how you're getting them, what happens when you get them, to the client offboarding, everything that's happening in between. So a lot of the times, some of the missing pieces is, how am I continuing to attract? What's my marketing piece? What's my language? Because if you continue to tell me you're not liking and enjoying the projects that you're getting, or you're not getting the budgets that you want to work with because you don't feel like you're really able to share or show what you can do because the client budget is too small, then we need to take a look at your language, right? And where you're showing up and what have you. So, so that is a big piece. So I recently, like last year, my program, I worked with a designer who had just left a very big city center and she moved to a much smaller suburb. And she's like, how do I get started again? Right. And so we worked through that. And a lot of it, I find, especially since COVID, a lot of us don't want to network. And I know a lot of people just cringe when they hear that word. They want to network as long as it's behind their screen and it's Instagram posting and showing up on stories, but they don't want to get out there and network. And with this particular designer, she had a really good working relationship with a vendor. And I said to her, I said, why don't you offer to take them out for dinner or for coffee, right? It doesn't have to be fancy. It could just, hey, would you like to go out for a coffee? She ended up going out for coffee with this husband and wife team that were very good vendor. And they were so impressed with her. They loved her. And now they refer to her all the time. One coffee date, right? And I know, and I don't know why we hesitate and we just want to stay behind our screens. I think that is the downside to COVID, is that we just got so comfortable being behind our screens that the idea of getting out there and asking someone to go for a coffee, and having a conversation with them, can be a little overwhelming and it can be a little daunting. But I feel if you're really wanting to break into your local market, especially if you've just moved there or not, you need to pay attention to who's doing business. And so if you have a vendor that you absolutely adore and you really love working with them and you love their product, then see if there's some sort of relationship there that you can create. We all can really easily drive around our neighborhoods and we know the realtor that's doing really well. Start following them, start engaging with them, right? And then once you build some sort of rapport with them, ask them to go out again for a coffee. I did that years ago, kind of thing, because, and again, go out for coffee with the realtor that's selling in the neighborhood where you want to work, right? I mean, and what have you. So again, yes, my program is not just, the workflow and the process, but it's the whole piece of the puzzle. Now, sometimes the designers, they got that piece down. The prospects and the pipeline, that's flowing and they've got that down, but it's knowing how to time their projects so they're not taking on everything all at once. And then how to, they show up for the initial consult and they promise, a design concept within a week of 5 rooms. And it's like, you're not giving yourself time to do the creativity. And then they tend to be working through the projects and there's a little piecemeal. And then the client, is not able to see the whole vision because, we picked the sofa, but we've yet to pick the chairs. And so again, it's just working out, okay, how are you going to put all this together? How are you going to present it to the client? Get the approval for it. And what have you. And a lot of the designers I work with too, they really struggle with the making sure they're getting paid. Right? They're doing all the work, but they're not the cash flow. And so I talk about that a lot as well. And again, I contribute that my corporate background and experience, and definitely working with some really big accounts. We have to look at the cash flow as well, because I never would want you to be in a situation where you just went out and put a huge order on your credit card and you haven't even invoiced the client yet. You don't have written approvals or anything. And all of a sudden the client decides to change their mind, or they don't want to pay up or what have you. So I'm all about making sure that whatever we put in place for you, that we're protecting you as well.
I mean, throughout life, we all learn from mistakes that we make, but you don't want to be a solo designer making a $50,000 mistake. Like
No.
that will kill your business. And,
Yep.
So
Yeah.
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 And going back to what you were saying about, reaching out to vendors and real estate agents and things like that. I mean, your vendors want you to be successful, because when you're successful, you buy more from them and their business becomes more successful. So that's a no-brainer. And the real estate agent, I know 2 designers who they've offered up a hour-based kind of like package to the real estate agent and say, I'll give you 2 of these a year.
Yeah.
And it gets them $750 worth of consultant time, and you give it to whoever you want. It doesn't have to be you giving it to somebody you think is going to, hire me for a bigger package. You do whatever you want with it. And now the real estate agent is sitting there with these 2 presents that they can give out, when they need. Maybe they've screwed something up and they're looking like, oh, I need to rebuild that relationship. And you've done them a solid. And then all it takes is like, you get 1 referral from the real estate agent, and then suddenly you've made, $30,000 back from giving away these 2 packages. Like,
yeah. Reach out to the local builders, reach out to your local architects, right? One designer I've worked with, she gets a ton of work from a mom's Facebook group in her community, right?
Exactly.
Like, show up where your people are showing up. That's where you need to be, right?
It's such a personal business, interior design. You're in people's homes. You're discussing how their families work. You're seeing them when they're stressed out. So why would you not like it? That personal relationship does go both ways.
Yes.
Right?
We often hear what we offer is a luxury service. Definitely. It sure is, right? It is a luxury service, but it's also very personal. And so when I walk into someone's house for the first time, the first thing I do after, of course, introducing myself is thanking them and recognizing that I realize that you've just welcomed me into, your home. And I get that, and I understand what that means, and I don't take that for granted. I actually acknowledge that with my clients when they decide to work with me, and whatnot, because you want to build that rapport, you want them to trust you, and you want them to realize that what they've taken on by having you come in and with a renovation pretty much turn their life upside down, right? Because it's really stressful. It's really stressful, and it's a lot. And by the time you're at the end of it, everyone is ready for it to be done, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that's the most important time too. Like at the end, that's when you want them happy with you.
Yes, that I always use the going on vacation analogy, right? We go on vacation. Is a 10-day vacation. The first 8 days are amazing, right? They're fabulous. It's like dream vacation. And then the last 2 days, you might have rain and you show up at the airport and your flight's delayed. And when you get back home, what do we tend to remember? And this is just how we're wired. We tend to remember the last 2 days and how, utter, terrible they were, kind of thing. So you don't want to get to that close to the finish line and all of a sudden everything starts falling apart because everyone's exhausted and everyone is just over it and what have you. Like, you want to finish strong. So I often talk about, because we often hear in our industry, well, what's your onboarding process? Well, yeah, you want to wow them, right? Because you want them to sign, but your offboarding is just as important, right? How you finish up that project and tie up loose ends is just as important as how you began that project. Because again, like the vacation analogy, they're going to remember the end, right? And something that I've recently started talking about on my social media is, you've got two separate clients, two different designers. same budget, similar room, similar timeline. And, both of them end up with beautiful spaces, but one has a story to tell, right? One sees it just as a transaction kind of thing. And so what is the differentiation there, right? And it's one, the designer with the story to tell really took the time to get to know her clients, understood how they wanted their space to feel and work for them and how they were going to use it, remembered certain nuances about the family or about the people that they're working for, whereas the other one was very much all business and just saw it as a transaction, right? I'm going to give you this in return for this kind of thing. And so that, again, coming back to how you're working with that client through the entire process makes all the difference in your referral network and in your repeat clients. Because you don't want to be just doing a project and just seeing it as a project. Okay, it's done and I got paid for it and I'm moving on. You don't want it to do that, because you're constantly going to be, what I almost say, like reinventing the wheel and constantly having to be going out and looking for new clients, and you're constantly starting at ground zero every time, right? So if you really do a good job, now obviously there's going to be some clients where you're just like, I don't want to do that again, right? We've been, but that shouldn't be every project, because if it is every project, then we need to go back to ground zero and we need to look at what your qualification process is and your communication and the language that you're using.
Okay. I'm wondering, so now that you've been doing this, working with designers, helping them, I'm curious how this has impacted your design business. Like, are there lessons that you've learned as the teacher that you're now brought into your design business?
Definitely. So, I always say we're going to, I have my own workflow, I have my own processes and what have you, but things are always evolving. And even in my business, things are not always perfect. So just this past fall, I had a custom window seat cushion fabricated by an upholsterer that I have worked with for years. And the cushion got picked up and it got delivered, and it was too short by like this much, like 6 inches too short. And I was like, what happened? Because I know, like, if out of anything, I know I'm a very good communicator and that I dot my I's and cross my T's, but I'm like, what happened? And so I went back through my process. I'm like, okay, now I need to do an audit, right? Like I have to go back. I have to like, what happened and what do I do to make sure that that doesn't happen again? And so I went back. And so what ended up happening is I sent off my estimate in an email. I just typed out an email message. I need you to give me an estimate for a cushion. This is the rough measurements because it's not built yet. This is the rough measurements. This is the fabric that we're going to use, and I want this kind of piping and what have you. So a lot of the details were there, but I did state that the final measurements will be confirmed when the bench is built. And so couple of months go by because I get my quotes really early in my process. And then, a couple of months goes by. So that would have been back in February. And then last August, September, I now say, okay, the bench is built. And I have now done up an actual work order for her. And I sent it out to my upholsterer again through email. But when it came time to do it, she searched my name and she came up where she provided the quote. And I'm like, so she built it off the quote, not off the actual work order. And I'm like, okay. So, and again, I didn't want to burn bridges with this vendor because it wasn't necessarily her fault or my fault. There was obviously, I need to make some changes to my operating, my SOPs when it comes to going from quote to an actual work order. And how do I prevent that from happening? And so instead of reacting and be like, okay, you need to fix this and I'm pointing fingers, I want it to be very collaborative in my approach. Because again, I've worked with this upholsterer for years. We've never had anything like this happen. Even though my process that I just outlined to you has always been the case and we've never had an issue, but now we did. And so I was like, I need to fix this to make sure this never happens again. So I went and I updated my process when it comes time from going from a quote to a work order. But I also was very collaborative in my approach to the vendor and saying, okay, the cushion is 6 inches too short. I want to work with you on how can we fix this for the client. I want to be very collaborative on this. And so we came out with a solution that everyone was going to be happy with. I didn't expect her to do all of it, to remake the whole thing and her eat all the cost. But I also wasn't going to have my client, of course, pay for another cushion because it definitely wasn't their fault. So I offered to pay her cost on her materials and the fabric and whatever we couldn't reuse. And she would throw in the labor. And so that was what we worked out. And, I've continued to work with her. So again, I often find I don't like drama. And so I'm like, let's not be reactive. Let's take a moment when things like that happen to learn from them, because mistakes are going to happen. We're human. You got to be honest about them. So I often see on social designers posting saying, I messed up and I tried to cover it. I didn't want to be forthright. And first of all, always be honest. Always be honest. Apologize and be very solution oriented. Do not point fingers. Do not place blame, because this is a relationship business. It's a relationship with your clients. It's a relationship with your vendors and with your trades. And you don't want to be known as that designer that nobody wants to work with, right? It's really hard to do business when you have that reputation. And so I always recommend and encourage people to be upfront and honest, even when it's really difficult to do. Recognize that you're not human. Yeah, have your little pity party, beat yourself up over it, but then dust yourself off. Okay, how am I going to solve this? And what have you? And then, come out on the other side with the client with the right sized cushion in my case, and it's still a really healthy working relationship with my upholsterer.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, it's a fairly inexpensive mistake that can be a learning, a way to learn and improve. Because I mean, imagine if it had been the built-in bench that the error had happened, right? Way more expensive, or the kitchen cabinets were measured incorrectly, or somebody like in this example, went off the wrong email. Now you're talking tens of thousands of dollars. So
exactly. So that was a very small accident that happened that I was able to fix. So going forward, to hopefully prevent a bigger thing from happening. When it comes to measurements, I will always go in to measure, but things like cabinetry and stuff before it gets measured, I am very blessed. I have a general contractor that I've worked with for 12, 13 years now. And before I have a kitchen ordered, he comes in and we do a site visit. And we go through all the measurements and we map things out, even for things like tile and what have you. If I'm getting custom drapery done, I get my drapery person in. Okay, this is what I've measured, but I want you to double check that, right? So, if there is a discrepancy, not necessarily is it going to come back on my shoulders because I did my due diligence, right? I always say, this is it's in my skill set to do all the measurements, but you're going to be the one making the drapery. I've told you what the fabric is, so you know what the repeat and the pattern, all that stuff is, but I need you to do your measurements because you're going to be the one making them, right? Kind of thing. So I take a very collaborative approach with all my trades that I'm working with. And so it was definitely a team-oriented endeavor.
Which you need. I mean, it is a team business for sure.
Yeah.
We touched on that little technical error that happened for you. I kind of want to go a little sideways and look at the tech stuff, because you mentioned that before, with definitely a focus on AI, because I mean, it's everywhere and every business is concerned. Where do you see that going? Because I know when ChatGPT first came on the scene, people freaked out, like, that's it. That's the end of this industry. That's the end of that industry. And I think we've gone through a phase now where people are like, they've been like, oh, it's not really doing what they said it was going to do. So I'm not really that afraid. And I don't think designers ever should have been afraid because of the high touch and the luxury side of the service. I mean, people watch HGTV and think they're an interior designer when real designers know that's laughable,
right?
And now you've got homeowners who are, bringing ChatGPT with them to client meetings. I've heard. So the designer will say something, they whip out their phone, they asked the question to ChatGPT and they said, well, ChatGPT said something different.
Right.
Right. So,
yeah. If we were to go back and look at, like I say, I've been in this industry for 2 decades, tech has come a long way, and there's always been tech of some sort. And you're always going to have people who resist tech. Always, right? Like you go back, anytime something new comes out, you're always going to have the pool of people that resist it. And then you're going to have the pool of people that's just going to embrace it. They're first out of the gate. And then you're going to have the group in the middle that kind of sit back and watch and observe and then slowly start to integrate it. AI is not going to go away. It's not. And what have you. And I use it a lot in my business to help me with a lot of stuff on the back end of things to just make me a little bit more efficient and what have you. There's AI concepts now and AI for rendering. And I always say, if you're going to use any sort of AI, especially in your visualizations, tell the client that it's AI generated. Like, be upfront and honest about it, and be upfront and honest with them that it is part of your process. So you do use some AI to generate some visualizations. Now, as for a client in a client meeting, pulling up their Chat GPT and AIing something that I've said in front of me, I haven't had that happen yet. At the end of the day, I would remind them that AI is pulling from data from numerous sources, and nothing is ever going to replace the hands-on expertise and experience and skill set that I'm bringing to your physical project. Nothing is going to replace that. So I don't, we've always had this fear that technology is going to replace human beings. And now it's AI is going to replace human beings. And like, nothing is, you can Chat GPT a color in your room. Have at it. It's not going to be exact. It's not necessarily going to be what works, because of course, when, I'm just using a paint color as an example, for example, because it's not taking into account, if you're northern exposure, it's not taking into account how many windows, what kind of lighting you have in the room, and what have you. AI has definitely come a long way. AI rendering is, becoming a thing. For me, I always like to do my due diligence right now, and I want to make sure that things are scaled properly. So I am still definitely doing my floor plans, in my program that I use, and I'm still doing my 3D renderings. But I haven't resorted so much to doing a lot of visualizations using AI. I'm definitely playing around with it. And I did use it for a recent powder room because it was such a small room, just to show everything together. But I do use it a lot for the back end system side of things, kind of thing. I think it can be used really smart that way. And one thing that I've been using, I do a lot of rendering for designers. And so if they come to me and they're like, they have this really odd shaped, coffee table they want to use. Well, I don't want to have to go into SketchUp and build that model. Like that's not an efficient use of my time. So I will use a 3D AI rendering app to pop that image of that coffee table in. It will generate the 3D model for me, and then I can import it into my rendering program. So I love it for that, right? There's nothing hurting to do that, because I'm not having to spend time in SketchUp building the model to export it out and import it into my program. So it has its place. Those are like absolutely not. And I know a lot of people talk about the impact it's having environmentally and what have you. I'm not going to even touch that, because that's opening up a can of worms. But with technology, it's really hard to run a business today without using some sort of technology in your business. And I've had meetings with designers who are still got the filing cabinet next to their desk, and they're using file folders, or they're using the zippered pockets to keep everything on track. And, they're out there, and I'm like, at some point, you're going to have to digitize some portions of your business. You definitely do, and I also don't think you should be running your business through your inbox either. Like, And before, when I was doing things that way, everything was being emailed. Everything was being emailed. And you know yourself, you email something to a client on a Monday, Tuesday, by Friday, Saturday, they're asking you to resend it because they're not going back through their inbox to look for it, right? So what do? You go back through your sent items, you locate it, and you either resend it again, right? I eliminated all that. So a lot of client designers don't like the idea of having a portal or a place for their clients to log in and have access to things. I've only ever and I've used multiple portals. I've only ever had clients give me kudos because they know they can log in at any time. They can access their project. They can see things, and I am not having to send multiple emails, and they're not having to keep track of multiple emails. And they can see their statement of account anytime. They can see their renders, their images. They can see their product list. Like, they can see it when they have the time to sit down with each other and review it. And a lot of times that's on the weekends. So I really cut down a lot of that. I don't want to be running my business through my email. All of our emails are really noisy and busy, right? It's overwhelming. So
Right. Yeah, you're in control of what they can see, because there's going to be aspects of that project that you don't want them to see. You don't want them to see inter-office communications and
no,
obviously pricing and things like that.
yeah, no, clients.
Yeah.
So I just onboarded 2 new clients. I am using a newer platform, and I onboarded 2 new clients just last week, and immediately, oh my God, your proposal was beautiful. Like, they read through the proposal, and then if they were happy with that, they clicked next, and then they had their letter of agreement they were able to sign. Then they were able to pay for their invoice. And I sent 1 email. And on the email, it says, get started. There was a button, and they clicked it. They got a welcome email from me. They got to see the brochure. They got to see the proposal. They got to see their letter of agreement and their invoice. I mean, it was super slick. And that was 1 email. And you know what? Before I had any sort of system in place, I used to track my time. And that's something else. Whether we do hourly or flat fee, I don't care how you bill. You do what works best for you. But if you are not tracking your time, you have no way to go back and do an audit on that project. And if you cannot do an audit on that project, you're not able to identify what I call your chaos leaks. Where are you losing time? Where are you losing money? Right? And so everyone's like, oh, I do a hybrid, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that's going to work for everyone. Some people bill hourly for everything. And some people like to do the flat fee. I do a hybrid. I'm comfortable doing a flat fee on the part of the project that I know I can control, the variables that I can control. I know how long it's going to take me to do a design concept for 5 rooms on a main floor. I know how long it's going to take me to do the sourcing for that and the floor plans. But when it gets to the procurement and the install and the project management, there are so many variables now outside my control. I don't even want to flat fee that kind of thing. So then I do go hourly. That is just my process. And again, I have designers who do a variation of that, or they do all hourly. Again, what works for me, I'm not going to push on you. But we are going to have that conversation. But if you're not tracking your time, you can't do an audit. There's no way you can go back and do an audit on all the projects you did last year and to know, did you make money? Are you losing money? Yes, you can go and look at your profit sheet and your, and look at your lines on your statement. But again, you don't know where you lost time, kind of thing. So
I don't sound too much of a fanboy, but I really appreciate the flexibility that you're obviously is in your business. You're aware of that, but how you're presenting that to your designer clients.
yes,
Like, it's not a cookie cutter thing. And I've spoken with like many business coaches, ones who are specific to designers and ones who work in different groups. And far too many of them, to me, have systems that are set in stone, and they expect their students to wrap themselves around these very rigid systems, and that drives me crazy. I mean, I get that you need to have a system, but
yes,
there should be, whether it's 10% or there has to be some flexibility to
yes,
it,
yes.
right? So I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Um,
my saying, my slogan, if you will, is there's more than one way to build a design business. And I am not going to, what has worked for me is not necessarily going to work for you. You're going to be in a different phase in your business, different season of life than what I'm in right now. Just because everyone else is doing it this way doesn't mean that's how you have to do it. You get to decide how you show up in your business. You get to decide what services you offer. Like I work with a designer. She doesn't do procurement at all. She doesn't touch it. Right. And there's, a chunk of the community out there was saying, well, she's leaving money on the table. She's a very profitable designer. She is happy. And again, success looks different to everyone as well. So that's why my program is so personal. It is one-on-one. You are working with me, and I am not selling you a system because there is no one size fits all. Right. So I get to know you personally. I get to know where you're at, and I get to help you build a business so you can show up how you want to show up. I'm all about autonomy. That's why the corporate culture doesn't work for me. I'm all about autonomy, having freedom to show up, having freedom to serve the clients I want to serve, and what have you. But at the end of the day, I do want you to be profitable. I want you to be able to, support yourself if that is something that you really want to do. Because again, I work with women from all different backgrounds, all different seasons. And so we open up, we're going to open up the book and be like, okay, where are you at now? Where do you want to be? And how can I help you get there? And what do we need to fix and what's working, kind of thing. But I'm not going to push a certain system on you. And as I mentioned it earlier, I don't make any grandiose gestures either. But I'm not going to tell you, by adopting my system, I'm going to guarantee that you make X amount of dollars. I'm not going to do that because again, there are so many variables outside of my control that I cannot make that. And I'm not comfortable making that. But I will tell you that you will feel better about yourself and your business at the end of the program.
Okay. Well, you've sold me on it. So let's say I'm an interior designer who is hoping that 2026 is going to be a better year than last year was. How do I reach out to you? And what does the process look like when I do reach out?
So when you reach out to me, I do like to jump on a quick call. And I know some people don't like to do a discovery, but I do like to jump on a quick call because I want to make sure that we're going to be a good fit working together, because I'm not trying to be everyone's cup of tea. And I know I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I want to gauge where you're at, what you're looking for, to make sure that we're going to be a good fit, because my program is one-on-one and it's very personal, that I want to make sure that we're going to work well together. And so I do offer a complimentary call. It is not salesy because I've been on that call where I've had a coach bring me to tears, and I am a tough woman and I don't cry easily. And so I would never do that. It is a very judgment-free space. And so I offer a call. Let's jump on a call. No pressure, no commitment necessary. You just tell me where you're at, where you need help, need support. And then from there, you can sign up. I mean, there's no one stopping them from going to my website right now, marshasefcik.com, and signing up. But most people want to have a little chat, unless we have chatted a lot through Instagram. You know what? Send me a DM on Instagram. I chat to a ton of designers every day, kind of thing. I am happy to chat. I love to talk, as you probably picked up. And so, yeah, I have lots of conversations. My DMs are always open. And so either Instagram or through my website. Kind of, and there's a ton of resources there. I do have a newsletter that goes out every Friday. I share 3 tips and 2 resources every Friday at lunchtime that hits your inbox, and you can read that thing in under 5 minutes. So it is jam-packed. So I have a lot of people really look forward to that. And I often get a response to it. It's like, oh my God, were you on site with me this week? Because this is what happened. Or were you part of that meeting? Because that's exactly what's going on. So I do feel I have my finger on the pulse. I understand what's going on. I understand what designers are facing and what they're experiencing. So I do try to provide a lot of resources to them. So through my newsletter, through my Instagram post, and like I say, I'm always open for a chat through DM, or if you want to jump on a call, that's great too.
Fantastic. Well, I was hopeful about this podcast, and I am very glad that I had you on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. You made it easy. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Marsha.
Thank you. Bye now.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Interior Design Her podcast. If Marsha's perspective on building sustainable design businesses resonated with you, especially if you're exhausted from running chaotic operations that keep you underpaid despite your talent, connect with her at her website or send her a DM on Instagram. She offers a complimentary discovery call to see if her Bring Calm to Chaos program aligns with where you are in your business. And if this conversation helped you see business structure differently, share this episode with another designer who's working incredibly hard but can't figure out where the profitability went. Sometimes we all need permission to build something sustainable instead of just hustling harder. And please like and subscribe to the Interior Design Her podcast. Our algorithm overlords love it when you do that. I'll see you in the next episode.